Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of this F1 25 Joshua Pearce career mode. If you did miss the last part of this series, we were in Saudi Arabia for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, where Max Verstappen took another victory in this season ahead of Charles Leclerc, and Lando Norris also had a very crucial podium in the last episode to stay in touch with Max Verstappen after he had a DNF in the previous episode as well. Our race just wasn't meant to be in the end for us. We didn't have a great tyre wear and we needed to go to a two-stop after we were trying to go for the one-stop. And that strategy just did not work, and in the end still managed to finish in the points, just a lot further down than we were expecting. Max Verstappen extends his championship lead going into this race weekend, 16 points clear of Lando Norris. That's Piastri in third, 27 points behind, myself in 6th position, 1 point behind George Russell. Hayes in 13th, 3 points behind Alonso, and McLaren lead the Constructors' Championship by 3 points to Red Bull Racing. Then it's Ferrari in third, 38 points behind, and APXGP, we move up to P5, 4 points behind Alpine. And we've got another secret meeting this time around, and last meeting we declined further talks with the Sauber. So it's going to be interesting to see who is also going to be interested in our services going forward. Notably, though, we did also refuse to talk to Sauber because they're Ferrari powered. We currently are a Mercedes, not a development driver, but we are driving a Mercedes powered car, so we should probably try and stick to Mercedes. And we'll go straight into the secret meeting, and we're going to be having a look, and it is going to be Haas. Haas is an interesting one to have a meeting with. So it's notably another Ferrari-powered unit team that's looking at us, and so far we can only see the performance of the current drivers. So neither Esteban or Oliver have scored points so far this season, and the team currently sits last in the Constructors' Championship versus where we have managed to get a podium for ourselves, and Sonny has had a P7 with the team, and the team is currently sitting very nicely in 5th position in the Constructors' Championships, so we're going to also decline further talks with Haas at this stage in our career, looking to stay with APXGP for a while, but we'll definitely keep an eye out for any further, maybe even bigger teams that could possibly show some interest.
Hey, me again. Been chatting with some of the team higher-ups, and they're delighted with the loyalty you're showing to the team and the project. Now's a good time to ask for a bonus, or a boat, or whatever it is you people get up to out of the car.
And now going forward, we're not going to be spending any points so far for this episode, only because we've reached department capacity in our R&D, so there's not much that we can do at the moment, but we still go into this race weekend with a couple of upgrades on the car. So half of them are actually on the car. Unfortunately, there was 2 that failed, and they were the new beam wing and the new material for the MG UK, but luckily we do have 2 that pass quality control, and they are wing mirrors and the new monocoque structure, so definitely looking forward to seeing how those improve the cars. And the weather forecast is looking like it will change things up for sure, with it being dry for the weekend except for the Grand Prix. So we'll need to make a decision about setups for the Grand Prix, if we essentially sacrifice qualifying for a good race setup or try and do a good qualifying and maintain position. And now taking a look at how the performance standings heading into another sprint weekend, it's McLaren and Red Bull bringing more upgrades this weekend, as do Ferrari and Mercedes, so the top 4 relatively unchanged. It's still very close between the rest of the field. With APX, we're now jumping ahead of the Racing Bulls to find ourselves the 9th fastest team on paper, with Sauber currently the slowest, as we head straight into sprint qualifying.
Welcome back to Miami and welcome to qualifying. Only raw speed will separate these drivers today, but the question is, who's got what it takes to get pole?
Well, at the moment, it is looking quite dry around this circuit, so hopefully we can try and get our laps in before the weather rocks up, because we are going to be running a little bit more of a dry setup to try and make sure that we can utilize our pace as best as possible for the actual sprint race. So as we come to the end of our first flying lap here, we're on the medium tyres, as the mediums is the only tyre available to us, and it is going to put us P11 behind a Haas and an Racing Bull, so not a great lap to start off with. We found about 3.5 tenths, nearly 4 tenths of a second of going onto our second flying lap. And this will be our final lap as well, because the medium won't really be able to improve off a third flying lap, and that'll put us up to P15, and we'll have to see if that's going to be good enough. But Leclerc is fastest in SQ1 by 7 hundredths to Lando Norris, and Piastri in third, 2 tenths behind. Knocked out in SQ1 though. Unfortunately, we did get knocked out, and it was only by a tiny margin as well. It was only just over a tenth of a second, and then it's Isaac Hadjar, Sonny Hayes, Bortoletto, Ocon, and Lawson.
Welcome to today's sprint. This is shaping up to be another fantastic weekend. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks for today's sprint. Lando Norris put in a fantastic lap yesterday, and he'll start from pole position, edging out Max Verstappen, who'll start from P2. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Piastri, Tsunoda, Charles Leclerc and Russell, Hamilton, Antonelli, Albon and Carlos Sainz, Fernando Alonso, Gasly, Nico Hülkenberg and Stroll, Behrman, Doohan, Joshua Pearce and Isaac Hadjar, Hayes, Bortoletto, Ocon and Liam Lawson rounds off the grid. And with preparations almost complete, let's head trackside for today's sprint.
Okay, mate, radio check, please, radio check. Okay, let's try not to worry about being down here at the back. You've got the speed, you've got the car, so just take it easy and the race will come to you.
Well, hopefully our setup choice is going to aid us in a recovery drive here. It's going to be the medium tyres to the end of the sprint race, so the no-stop strategy going ahead as now we wait for the lights to go out, and it is lights out and we're off. It's a really good start for ourselves. We're making up a heap of positions. Stroll's had a bit of a shocker, but Behrman is swerving all over the place, and we'll go to the outside. We lock up the rears just slightly. It's 3 abreast in front of us, and we're pretty much blocked in, but we've made contact and we've gone to the wall, and we have got critical floor damage there. It is as bright red as you can make that damage go, and so surely that is going to be our recovery drive done and dusted. But we take our eyes to the front of the grid because it is side by side for the lead of this sprint race, and it is a Piastri versus Max Verstappen with Lando Norris right behind him. It's 2 McLarens and 2 Red Bulls. If Yuki Tsunoda can find his way into this battle, he is right there in P4, just a few car lengths behind. It is now 3 wide for the lead of the sprint race as they come into the hairpin, this middle part of the track here. They make contact. There's contact further behind as they're also 3 wide behind Verstappen, though. He comes out in front. The 2 McLarens battle it out. Norris is now ahead of Oscar Piastri. Then it's Yuki Tsunoda just behind. So the top 4 have broken away. And behind them, it's George Russell and Charles Leclerc still going side by side through the very clumsy sector there of this Grand Prix circuit, and they'll continue to go side by side. No DRS aid just yet, as it's now Charles Leclerc who looks like he's going to be losing out. They continue to go 3 wide. The 2 McLarens also just at the bottom of the screen there, also going side by side once again, and there's further contact. So a very clumsy opening lap of this sprint race here as everyone is making contact. Russell, though, he'll take P5 away. Now Hamilton is looking to try and take advantage of this battle and get himself past his teammate here, and this will get himself up into P7 if he's able to make this work. You'll have to go the long way, though, around turn 1 and the inside to turn 2, and once again back to the long way, and he'll have to slot in behind Charles Leclerc. Kimi Antonelli now finds himself tucked up behind the 2 Ferraris. Then it's Albon and Nico Hülkenberg rounding out the top 10. And we'll take a look at a replay here of the race start. So this is on board with ourselves as we get ready for the start of the Grand Prix. It's a really good start here at the start of this sprint race, and Oliver Behrman there just swerving all over the place. We now get boxed in with nowhere to go, and we try and swing it out to try and get a better exit, but we make contact there with, I think, is that an Aston there? Possibly, and that's going to pretty much prove the end of our sprint race here. So it's actually us on the outside of both the Astons, and so as a Stroll is here, he's kind of pinched in and he's up against the wall now, so he's kind of an innocent bystander there. And now on board here with Fernando Alonso, he would be the middle car out of this 3-wide battle, and yeah, I just kind of come across there and he is sandwiched between his teammates and myself, so very unfortunate there for the 2 Astons. That was my spatial awareness not being very good at the start of this sprint race, and it has become very costly for myself and Fernando Alonso. Alonso's actually come in for a pit stop there to replace his front wing, so he finds himself now nearly 20 seconds off the back of the field, and we are really struggling as well with the damage that we sustained in that tangle, as well as the 2 McLarens. So they continue to battle it out, which has allowed Max Verstappen to bolt, essentially. He's now got a 2-second lead as they continue to battle. This time it's going to be Lando Norris on the outside at essentially the final corner, the final braking zone of the lap, and he'll take a P2 around the outside, so he got the better traction there on what would be the traditional racing line by the time they got to the exit of that corner. But this battle will continue, so the inter-McLaren battle really seeming like it's heating up now with both drivers in championship contention well and truly still, but it is Piastri who's slowly falling off the back of Lando Norris. He hasn't been as consistent towards the front of the field, whereas so far this season we have seen a Red Bull at least on every podium we've had this season, which is insane consistency for them in the first portion of this season. We managed to hold on to P17 from Liam Lawson, though, but unfortunately we do start falling back into the field as Hulkenberg's doing really well at the moment to keep himself inside this top 10. Unfortunately for him, it's not going to be for the points as of yet because it is only a sprint race, so only the top 8 will be scoring points. So Albon, the last point scoring finisher at this point in time, signed, so he's wanting to get himself now up inside the top 10. The Williams looking half decent around this circuit so far this race weekend, both of them qualifying pretty well, and obviously the Sauber also doing really well to get themselves up into P11. So again, it's not for points, but it is still a pretty good result for them so far, as there was a yellow flag there, so I'm not too sure what that was for, but we look further up the field. It's because Tsunoda is now looking to get himself past Lando Norris here, and this will get him up onto the sprint podium, and this will give him a good solid 6 points in this championship here, because he's had a pretty rough first part of the season. But ever since he got that breakthrough podium in Japan, it has been looking pretty good for him as they go 3 wide around the final lot of corners there. And it's going to be Behrman now. He's looking to try and get that 10th position away from Nico Hulkenberg. So the Haas's are actually also looking half decent. Ocon, though, down in P18, so he probably sustained a little bit of damage in all the clumsiness of the first lap here in Miami. Hulkenberg, though, he will hold on to that P10 for now. But with the DRS assistance, Behrman is looking very racy. He goes to the inside at this corner now coming up, and he'll go to the inside. It will make him go around the outside as they go through this stadium section of the circuit, but Hulkenberg looking very strong and holds on to the position just for now. But behind him, it's our teammate Sonny Hayes. He's in P14, so he also is not really very close to the points at the moment. As behind, that's Hadjo, and he's had an almighty moment there, getting the rear of the car, hitting the wall. Surely that's going to be some rear wing damage, as we now take a look at the replay here of what happened to him. He picks up the throttle, and the car just breaks away. That's a very, very strange one for him to stay in the throttle, so maybe there was some sort of throttle issue for him to have such a moment going through that section of the circuit. Unfortunately for Bortoleto, he tried to find a gap that ended up just closing on him very, very quickly, and so he finds himself now with front wing damage, and he'll be probably falling down the order, and as he's going to be struggling, especially through the first sector of this circuit with all the very fast sweeping corners, as Albon and Hamilton now battling it out, the Williams versus the Ferrari. And so Hamilton will surely get the better of Alex Albon here as he's continued to try and stick with his teammate Charles Leclerc, who's currently up in P6, but Albon will now have the inside, and there's a little bit of contact as they head through turn 2 there, but Hamilton will be in front of Alex Albon for now, as Charles Leclerc is looking to aim an overtake on George Russell, who used the DRS, and he'll get the move done before they even make it to the braking zone. So the DRS on the Ferrari looking very, very good, and he'll find himself now up into P5, but unfortunately, the DRS looks to be very strong across his back straight as well, and so George Russell will very quickly get himself side by side. He was actually side by side before they got to the DRS zone, so the DRS ended up just finishing off the move there for Russell to get himself now up into 5th position. His teammate, though, Antonelli, battling it out with the Williams of Alex Albon as they go through the stadium section side by side. Seen plenty of that so far in today's sprint race, but Albon will get the better of Antonelli for now and hold on to that P8 position. Going on to the final lap of this sprint race, though, Antonelli is looking to have one more crack at it. He now goes to the inside. He was on the outside last time around, inside this time around, and it looks like he's being a bit more affirmative there with the move. A little bit of contact there, trying to show that he means business here, but unfortunately for him, he still cannot get the move. The much more experienced Alex Albon will get the better of Antonelli this time around. And Max Verstappen, though, he'll be rounding this corner, and he'll be looking to claim a victory here in Miami for the sprint race, and that is going to surely give him great momentum going into tomorrow's Grand Prix, and he'll win here in Miami. Piastri will come home in P2, and Norris will round out the sprint podium so far today. Tsunoda in a P4, so it's a pretty dominant top 4 for the top 2 teams in the Constructors' Championship as it stands at the moment. For ourselves, though, Alonso, he'll get us with the DRS, and he'll also lock it up going into the corner here, making me a little bit more hesitant, sending it through the corner there, just in case if he made some sort of mistake and checked up. But you can just see with the damage how little grip and just how unstable the car has been for us this entire time. And yeah, a pretty shocking sprint race, but hopefully we can get some points in tomorrow's Grand Prix. But we'll take a look here at the results. Max Verstappen wins, Piastri and Norris on the podium, and then it's Yuki Tsunoda, Russell, Hamilton, Leclerc, and Alex Albon rounding out the points here in the sprint race. Our teammate ends up P17, up from where he started in P19. Ourselves in P20, unfortunately, after that opening lap clash.
Welcome back to Miami and welcome to qualifying. Only raw speed will separate these drivers today, but the question is, who's got what it takes to get pole?
Alright, this time around, I'm actually not looking forward to this session too much because to try and counter the wet weather we're expecting in the Grand Prix, we are actually going to be running a slightly, to these standards, a adhered setup. We're going to be running more of a wet setup, so we're definitely going to be losing it down the straights, and unfortunately there's 3 DRS straights around the circuit, so I'm not thinking that we're going to be doing too well as we immediately put it P20, which is not fantastic considering I actually thought that was a half alright lap. The second time around on the same set of tyres, we'll now find ourselves only just improving by a couple of hundredths of a second, and this will keep us P22, so really struggling, but hopefully this is just going to be a bit of a price to pay for hopefully a bigger bank transfer going into the Grand Prix. We improved by nearly a second, 7/10 up on our next flying lap with a better set of tyres, and that put us P20. So hopefully this will prove dividends and we can make it work in the Grand Prix. Russell fastest in Q1 by 700 ahead of Oscar Piastri. Norris in 3rd and 10th behind. Hayes in P13, so he'll make it to the next part of qualifying for him. Knocked out in Q1 though, Sainz by 10th of a second. Isaac Hadjar, Oliver Behrman, myself, Stroll, and Nico Hulkenberg not making it to the next part of qualifying as we now head to Sunday Grand Prix.
Florida is no stranger to world-class sport, and as of 2022, the USA's Sunshine State is now on the F1 calendar. Welcome back to the Magic City for the Miami Grand Prix. Well, it's certainly not sunny here in the Sunshine State. A lap of the Miami Grand Prix features 19 corners and 3.36 miles of track around the Hard Rock Stadium. But these conditions should prove especially difficult for all of our drivers today. It's time to take a look at our starting grid for today's race. World champion Max Verstappen starts from pole position, and Lando Norris lines up alongside. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Piastri, Leclerc, and Sir Lewis Hamilton, and Tsunoda, Russell, Ocon, Antonelli, and Fernando Alonso, Albon, Hayes, Liam Lawson, and Gasly, Doohan, Bortoletto, Carlos Sainz, and Isaac Hadjar, Behrman, Pearce, Stroll, and Nico Hulkenberg rounds off the grid. It's almost time for the lights to go out, so let's head down to the track where preparations are underway. And striding into our commentary box to join us today, the man, the myth, the legend, Anthony Davidson. And let's talk momentum with this driver. What a sprint it was. They start at 0 once again for today, but with a huge amount of confidence, surely. Well, they'll definitely be glad that there's not a sprint race today. Let's face it, the sprint couldn't have gone much worse, but what we're looking for today is a reaction. Now, I'll be generous here. It's not that long ago that you were racing and entertaining us on a Sunday, but in the years since, the sport has changed quite a bit, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has, Crofty. You know, the cars have got bigger, they're heavier, but critically, there's more downforce to play with as well now. There was about 4 tons of downforce on the car at 300 kilometers an hour when I drove. You're now looking more towards 5 tons of downforce. So there's a big difference in performance. But because of that, the car being heavier and bigger, you've got to drive in a smoother way. You've got to look after it a bit more. You've got to nurse it through the slow speed corners more. They were much more nimble, agile machines when I drove in Formula 1 compared to now.
Okay, give me a quick radio check, please. Radio check. Okay, this is going to take a monumental effort from you. I need you to push incredibly hard if we're going to get a good result today. Let's go and make it happen.
Yes, we do. We absolutely need to be pushing as hard as we can to try and get ourselves some points. It's going to be a one-stop strategy for us here today on the intermediate tyres. It's not as wet as I was expecting it to be, so hopefully this setup change will be the way to go for ourselves, and it's lights out and we're off for the Grand Prix here in Miami. It's another really good start from ourselves. We get squeezed all the way up to the wall by Isaac Hadjar, and we send it down on the brakes, and we manage to make so many positions. We're so brave on the brakes there. A tiny little bit of contact there with our teammate Hayes. We're battling now for P12. We're on the inside of turn 3 and we get the better traction. And that is us now all the way up into P12 from P20. Already up 8 positions by the time we get to turn 3. As up ahead now, Russell and Esteban Ocon go side by side. Ocon squeezes Russell out, and that now puts him down to P8. Alonso and Albon round out the points paying positions here. But the point will come now to see if our setup here is going to be any different to what everyone else is running. We're currently leading the final half of the pack here in P12, and Hayes is right up behind us, and we're kind of blocking him in a little bit, and oh my god, we have messed up. I am just looking at the straight line speed we've currently got, and it is absolutely shocking. We squeeze out Pierre Gasly there on the inside, and we managed to hold on to P12 as they're going side by side ahead of us here in through the stadium section, which is really holding the all up. But yeah, I think we've taken a bit too much wing put onto this car as we take out a little sniff there up the inside of Antonelli, but unfortunately we don't go for it, and we end up actually ruining our exit coming out of there. And so now we're under severe danger from losing the position to Pierre Gasly, and he's just going to drive straight by us. And we're also under attack now from Carlos Sainz. We're trying to go late on the brakes, and he merges over under the braking zone and nearly squeezes us into the wall. We try and get the better traction now, but you can just see we're still really struggling for traction here, even in the wet with a wet setup. So something has gone very wrong, and I think I have absolutely ruined our chances here of a good race today, but we will have to persevere and try and make what we can out of it. As we continue to lose positions down the straight, so through the corners, we're not seeming too bad. We're struggling for traction on corner exit, struggling for straight line speed, but through the actual corners, we're looking all right as we take avoiding action there of Oliver Behrman, and that actually results in us going for a very late dive, and we get more underbody and floor damage, and that is not looking too good. That is a pretty deep colored orange there, and so that may have also put the nail in the coffin for us, unfortunately, as we now trail our teammate Sonny Hayes. He's in P14, we're in P15, and I'm just going to imagine we're going to be losing more down the straight here. We've occurred massive damage according to Mark, so it is going to be probably a race-ending incident there for ourselves, unfortunately, as the top 3 have broken away now from Charles Leclerc, who finds himself in P4. Then it's Hamilton, Tsunoda, Ocon, Alonso, and Albon battling it out with George Russell. This is for P9 and P10. And then just behind him is Kimi Antonelli. He's definitely going to be looking to try and pick up any scraps if there's going to be any left available for him, as Lando Norris now looks to try and take the lead away from Max Verstappen. He'll use the DRS. The DRS is active in these wet conditions here. And so the FIA, knowing that down these straights we're going to have plenty of grip on these intermediate tyres, and that is Lando Norris now up into the lead. Max Verstappen, though, maybe just trying to preserve his tyres a little bit here, as he now loses position to Oscar Piastri as well. So that drops him from the lead of the Grand Prix down to 3rd position, as Tsunoda, he's looking now, he's the opposite of Max Verstappen. He's now also trying to get himself up the field as he goes to the outside of Lewis Hamilton, but it will give him the inside here for the stadium section, and they'll get him now up into P5 between the 2 Ferraris. Further behind, though, we're trying to defend from Oliver Behrman, and we do manage to successfully defend Oliver Behrman, as now we continue. We are really struggling to get the traction down coming out of that corner there, and so we'll lose the position here. Hopefully we can actually maintain the position, but he goes to our inside. We'll probably be losing it, and it's even more contact now as we try and pinch him off at the apex, and unfortunately he must have had a small lock-up or something, and that is put him into our side pod, and that is just absolutely terrible. You can just see the color of red that our underbody and our floor is now, so that has not worked out well for us as we get our first objective to keep the tyre wear. And looking at our tyre wear, it is absolutely shocking. We've got terrible tyre wear at the moment, so we may even be struggling to make this one-stop work at the moment. But we'll have to see how we go, as George Russell now, he's got himself ahead of Alex Albon. Antonelli, though, behind. He is now looking to try and get himself into the points here by dispatching Alex Albon, and he'll go to the outside here as they come through this very, as I described earlier, it's a very clumsy section of the circuit. You can never really make it feel like you've got it hooked up, as we now eventually do lose a position to Oliver Behrman. Piastri sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, and our tyre wear is, yeah, not looking fantastic as we see that percentage number just continue to climb. Lewis Hamilton, though, he's looking to get himself past his teammates, and with the DRS being squeezed up against the concrete there, he'll make the move done, and that's him now up into P4 ahead of his teammate, Charles Leclerc. Back on board with ourselves now. We're under attack from Liam Lawson in the Racing Bull. He goes to our outside. We also try and squeeze him up towards the concrete, try and discourage him from going for the move. But we then send it back down under the brakes, and we get the position back from him and maintain our P16 position here. And hopefully we can stay within the DRS of Oliver Behrman to help try and defend our position here, as Leclerc wants to get himself back in front of his teammate. He'll go to the outside, and as we've seen in the sprint race, Charles Leclerc will now probably get the better traction as he is now on the better and more preferred racing line, and that is exactly what happens. He gets the better traction, and he finds himself back in front of his teammate. For ourselves, though, we do get the DRS from Oliver Behrman now to help defend, but it is just no use. We've just got absolutely zero straight line speed, so Lawson goes flying in front of us, and that is him now up into P16. We make a tiny little bit of contact there to his rear end of the car as he kind of checks up a bit there in the middle of the corner. But as we continue to go, we're battling with Jack Doohan through this very fast section of the circuit. We start losing the rear end, and we have a bit of a snap, and that discourages him into the wall, and that is going to be a safety car as we continue to have snaps. So this car is essentially now just undrivable in these conditions, and with the amount of damage we got. And just to make matters worse, as I was trying to gather it up, Isaac Hadjar gets by us, and we have to let him back through because we were off the circuit. So that is just put another nail into the coffin, essentially. That has just ruined our day. But we're that far down. We got the damage. I'm going to try something here. I'm going to see how dry tyres work. We've got the DRS available to us. So obviously it's not that wet. So we're putting on a set of medium tyres to see what we can do here. So this is going to be a massive gamble. It's like a 1 in a million chance this could work, but I will take that chance at the moment, because otherwise I'm just going to keep getting swamped now with the field all compacted up again if I just go onto the intermediates. We'll take an order check here at the moment. So it's Lando Norris leading the way ahead of Max Verstappen, and Charles Leclerc rounding out the top three. Then it's Piastri, Ocon, George Russell, Fernando Alonso, Hamilton, Tsunoda, and Gasly rounding out the points. And it's Alex Albon, our teammate, in P12, Kimi Antonelli, Oliver Behrman, Liam Lawson, Carlos Sainz, ourselves now in P17 on those medium tyres. Then it's Stroll, Hulkenberg, Hadjar, Jack Doohan has actually rejoined the race, got himself a new front wing, is in P21, and Bortoletto rounds out the final position on the field at the moment as we get going for the restart here, and we've got no traction still at all. We've already lost a full second to Carlos Sainz before we even make it to the control line to restart the Grand Prix. And so this has proven probably not to be the greatest decision. We lock the rears going into turn one. We're still struggling for any sort of traction. We're constantly seesawing away at the steering wheel, trying to get a little bit of temperature back up into the tyres. The tyres are low on temperature. They're brand new, so they've still got a little bit of greasy compound on them, which isn't great in these wet conditions. We run wide, we're off the circle, we're on the paint, trying to put the throttle down, and we're now lost a position to Lance Stroll. He takes now P17 away from us. But yeah, this has definitely not gone to plan. As we have a massive moment and managed to keep it out of the wall. The wall sticks out a little bit there on the exit of the corner, and we're now losing the position to Hulkenberg down the straight. We're losing the position to Hadjar. Why not Jack Doohan at the same time? The guy who brought out the safety car. They'll now go 3 wide in front of us, and Jack Doohan thinks better of it though. He will tuck in behind, and they'll continue to go 2 wide. We lock the rears and have another bit of a moment, and so now I'm now considering that we should probably box and like wave a white flag. We're P21, we're on dry tyres. I've taken a gamble that obviously hasn't worked, and yeah, this is my white flag. We're just going to be cruising around and see what happens. Now we're going to box this lap, and even Mark's reminded me that we should box for the Inters. So yeah, unfortunately, unlike Australia where it was very similar conditions, if you remember, first episode of the series, we had a crazy race where we had at some stages 3 or 4 different tyre compounds out on track though. So we started on the dry tyres, so did a few other people. There was hards, there was softs, there was mediums out on track, and there was also the odd car on the intermediates in these sort of conditions, and they proved that the Inters were very fast on that day, but just as fast were the dry compound tyres as we were on. And on that day, we tried both compound tyres. We preferred the Inters, but this time around we've given the dries a go. They definitely weren't the way to go. So We'll jump back onto Inters. Unfortunately, though, that is pretty much going to be the end of our day. Lap 11, and we're already going to be over 20 seconds behind the last car in that train. We'll get another objective, though, that we have to try and keep the engine cool. So, obviously, that underbody and floor damage isn't diverting the air where it needs to go, and so the engine hence is suffering a little bit more, and so we'll need to try and keep an eye on that. As up ahead, Alonso is under attack from Yuki Tsunoda. He'll probably be losing P8 here to the Red Bull, and he'll go to the inside, which will give him the outside for the stadium section. Alonso, though, he'll be licking his lips that he has got this position at the moment. They'll continue to go side by side. Usually they've backed out of it, and they do now back out of it. Tsunoda does get it. Actually, Tsunoda is behind Fernando Alonso. I thought it was going to be the other way around. So Alonso has done really well to hold on to his P8. But further up ahead now, we've got Esteban Ocon. So through that pit stop phase, I completely missed it. Through the pit stop phase, Ocon has jumped himself all the way up to P5. So he's had an absolute brilliant pit stop phase to get himself that far up ahead. Charles Leclerc finds himself in third, but very quickly, he is now going to be under attack from Oscar Piastri. It's now lap 13 of this Grand Prix. Piastri, though, with no DRS. The DRS has been disabled by the race directors, and so he'll go to the outside. Charles Leclerc will now have the outside for the stadium section. Piastri to the inside. Will it play out the same way that it did for Tsunoda and Alonso? No. Piastri will get the position away this time around. Ocon finds himself now in P5. He's in a Ferrari sandwich, and he'll actually try and fix that for himself because he is now making a move on Charles Leclerc. This Haas has got absolutely brilliant pace, and for a second I thought he was going down the inside of Oscar Piastri as well to try and take away the podium, but he'll keep it to just the P4 for now. Tsunoda, though, he is now looking to try and finish off the move on Fernando Alonso, and he does manage to get that move completed. As back on board with ourselves now, we find ourselves completing our objective to keep the engine nice and cool. We've managed to do that, so I'm guessing a mixture of just clean air and cooler air temperatures, since it is quite moist out there on the track. As we've now found, the dry tyre is definitely not the way to go. So we pass that. Engine is staying nice and cool despite the damage that is probably affecting it, as now Albon is now looking to get himself past Alonso. So the Aston now maybe not looking so great now that it's on another fresh set of intermediates, because Alonso has dropped quite a few positions. They'll continue to go side by side though, but Albon will finish off the move and get himself up into P9. Hayes is the next person to try and get himself past Fernando here. So Fernando is definitely struggling out there because he's dropped from a P7 all the way now to outside the points, a little bit of contact into the braking zone, but our teammate will now get himself now into the points, sitting P10 on the road, as the two Ferraris will continue to battle it out. Hamilton swings it out very aggressively from behind Charles Leclerc, and he'll get the move well and truly completed before they get to the braking zone. Behind them, though, Tsunoda is looking to get himself now ahead of George Russell. So Tsunoda is on quite the charge since the safety car restart. He will now find himself on the inside as they go through this stadium section, and that will be the move completed as they head through. I'm going to say it once again, that section of track is so clumsy, but it is quite satisfying if you do get it very rarely correct. Most of the time you find yourself with either understeer or oversteer, so a very fine line to get that one correct. Hayes, though, he is continuing to try and get himself further up the points now. He is looking to take away that P9 away from Alex Albon. He gets it all sideways on the exit there, and he'll get himself better traction though despite the correction of the oversteer, and get himself now up into P9 as they head into turn 1. George Russell is looking to get himself now back ahead of Yuki Tsunoda, and without the DRS, it's going to now be purely just the straight line of your car and a bit of slipstream. So he'll look to the outside at the final corner. You can see a tiny little bit of a dry line now starting to form around the circuit. Unfortunately for him, he wasn't able to get the traction down, so he's going to have to wait until they get to the straight again, and he makes contact with the wall as he swings out from behind Yuki Tsunoda. So hopefully there isn't going to be too much damage there for the Mercedes driver, but that was a pretty decent whack with the concrete. He'll go to the inside now, and that will be the move completed on Tsunoda and get himself now up into P6. Tsunoda, though, once again, he doesn't want to give up this position, because if he continues to sit behind, Russell is slowly falling off the back of the two Ferraris. So there is my teammate, Sonny Hayes, P8. He is looking quite racy, and so they could possibly become under attack from the APX GP car, and if they do not get this thing sorted out, but Tsunoda will take that P6 away. And for ourselves, unfortunately, we mentioned it before, our first objective of the Grand Prix was to keep the tyre wear down. Since the safety car restart, we have been suffering massively from tyre damage, and we're not going to make the same mistake we did in Australia, and this time we do got nothing to lose. So we're going to box for another set of intermediate tyres, and this time we will easily be able to make it to the end of the Grand Prix. Only 7 laps to go, but I am completely oblivious to this as I'm coming out of the pit lane, that I've actually just come out in front of the race leaders as they're battling for position. So I'll very quickly get off the racing line and slow it down. Lando Norris will go by in the lead, and then Max Verstappen goes by in second place as well. So we're now a lap down compared to these two as they now battle it out right in front of us. Max Verstappen looking like this is going to be the time to take the lead away of Lando Norris, and he's been hovering about a second behind Lando since the restart, essentially. He has been probably conserving his tyres a little bit, trying to make these ones last to the end of the Grand Prix. Obviously, they've got the much better tyre wear, as they've been on these tyres for only about 2 laps longer than us, and ours were already in the red for the tyre wear. But unfortunately for Max, he doesn't actually manage to get the lead away from Lando Norris. Norris able to defend quite well. As we get our next objective of the Grand Prix, we need to achieve a pretty quick lap time here. He knows that we cannot fall even further behind, because that's going to hurt our ego and a bit of our reputation as a driver if we continue to fall through the cars a lap ahead of us, and it's only 3rd place, isn't too far behind us. But now we take a look at Max Verstappen once again. A few laps has gone by, he's rebuilt his ERS, and he looks to the outside of Lando Norris. He'll give him the inside. Norris has quite the slide there as he exits the corner, and so that will give a little bit of an edge to Max Verstappen, and Verstappen will take the lead away off Lando Norris. But for the final points paying position, Esteban Ocon is looking to get himself now up into P9, and in the end does so quite easily, and that's Pierre Gasly now dropping down to P10. But with only a few laps to go, Max Verstappen is coming into the pits. Lando Norris will continue on, so he'll take the lead back away from Max Verstappen. But is there an issue, or is the AI also suffering very late on very bad tyre wear? Maybe has Max realised that he could be facing the same issue that I did in Australia, as now Norris is also coming in. So Norris on lap 28, so by the time he gets into his pit box, he'll almost be crossing the start-finish line and doing a last lap pit stop. So there he is in his pit box now. It's lap 28, and as he pulls out, he will click over to lap 29, so he will be starting the final lap of the Grand Prix in the pit lanes. As Max Verstappen now comes down the main straight, surely he's got a giant overcut from Lando Norris here. He'll come through turn 1 and passes the pit exit, as Norris is only just entering the pit exit. And so Norris now finds himself seconds behind the race lead, but Max Verstappen, despite the very late pit stop, will find himself a victory here in Miami. That's 3 in a row now for Max, and Norris will come home in P2, 3.5 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton. Though he'll get himself a podium finish here, his 2nd podium finish of the season, his 2nd with a Scuderia Ferrari, and that will be very welcomed after a little bit of bad luck he's had in the last couple of races. Ocon, though, will finish P4, a brilliant race from himself, and for us, in the end, we didn't finish a lap down because they went into the pits, but that was a pretty shocking race. Finished dead last by an absolute country mile.
And in the end, there was no Verstappen. Max Verstappen, he takes victory.
And 3 wins in a row now, of course, Croft. You've thrown the gauntlet down. The drivers are out there now. They realise that they are the target. They're the ones to beat. They've got the energy. They've got the momentum on their side.
It's what they've all been racing towards, waiting for them. High above the pit lane is our podium. And for the lucky 3, it's time to stand on it. But there can only be one on the top step. Your number 1, Max Verstappen.
To close out the Miami Grand Prix weekend, it was a terrible weekend. A terrible weekend from ourselves. Damage in both races, and the wrong setup for the Grand Prix just made things even worse. We've got to have a look at that to find out where we need to improve for future events. And also, in case we come back to Miami, I need to work out what's going on so we don't have another Miami just like that. The rest of the top 10, though, Esteban Ocon, a brilliant P4, Oscar Piastri, Yuki Tsunoda, George Russell, Charles Leclerc, Alex Albon, and Carlos Sainz. Our teammate in P12, though, so he just misses out on some points, and then it is myself in P22. We were nearly a lap down. Verstappen leads the Drivers' Championship by 25 points now to Lando Norris. Piastri in third, 43 points behind. Myself in 8th, 5 points behind Yuki Tsunoda. Hayes in P14, 3 points behind Fernando Alonso. Red Bull lead the Constructors' Championship now by 2 points over McLaren. Then it's Ferrari in 3rd, 57 points behind APX GP. We're in P6, 4 points behind Alpine. We've now got a new driver rating rivalry against Yuki Tsunoda, and we're currently leading that one. We need to get up to rating 84 to win that one for our driver rating. So our experience is up to level 77. Racecraft is to 81. Awareness gains some points, while our pace and focus lose some points for an overall of 83. And our driver recognition continues to climb. It's now up to 55% against Hayes, and this now unlocks the 3rd R&D
It seems
perk.
as if you have a new rival. This is the perfect opportunity to show the world why you belong in this sport, and to show me why you belong amongst my very exclusive clientele. That's a joke. I love working with you.
Elena there confirming our new rivalry with Yuki Tsunoda, and we've got a lot happening to kick off next episode. We've got upgrades coming in. We've got plenty of points that we can hopefully spend if our departments aren't at capacity, and next weekend will be the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix at the Imola circuit. So if you did enjoy this one, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you for the next one for the Imola Grand Prix.